Hey everyone, welcome back to the third and final episode of our simple inventory system that we've been working on. In this episode, we're going to be cleaning up a few things. We're going to be adding a player's heads up display so we can see a few of our player's attributes and watch those update as we select items from our inventory, and a couple other minor cleanup things. If you haven't watched the first couple episodes yet, I highly recommend starting there since we're building off of that system. Before we get started, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, let's play through this and see where we left off. Right now, when we pick an item up, it automatically opens our inventory system for us, but our items are collecting in here. We can click these and we have it printing out what's happening over here. For this episode, we're going to create a heads up display to keep these attributes on the screen. We also don't want this to pop up when we pick an item up. We want to be able to open and close it. Right now, we can't do that. So that's another little minor thing that we're going to be working on to fix. But that being said, let's go ahead and start with, let's go create our heads up display that we're going to use. Another thing, we also have this error showing up. Which we'll be fixing this as well. The problem is I'm reading that inventory widget, which I'm setting to a variable. I'm reading it whether it exists or not, which is not the right way to do that. So we're going to be fixing this as well. Like I said, let's go ahead and do right click. Let's go to user interface and let's create a new widget blueprint, user widget. And I want to name this um, player display. And let's open that up. And in here, we have three attributes that we're going to show. If we open our item up, we have health, magic, and strength that we're going to be changing these attributes in our player as we select items. So your project, you can add as many of these as you want, and you don't have to use the same ones, and they don't have to be integers. So um, this technique will really work for anything you're trying to do. So we want three things to display here, and I'm just going to display them in the upper right of the screen as we use items. We'll see those things update. So inside your player display, let's go ahead and add a canvas. And then inside of this canvas, I'm going to, let's do it this way. I want to add a text block. This text block, I'm going to pull over where I want this to be, kind of over in this area. I'm going to rename this to HP text. And for this first block, this is just going to be the word HP. And then below that, let's go ahead and do a progress bar. And we're going to add that under our HP here. And to do that, I'm going to highlight both. And let's wrap this in a vertical box. And that will pull them both over into this vertical box. You can do some things here. I'm going to give this a little padding from the top, maybe just like that. And again, I'm going to keep this pretty simple. Over in your progress, let's fill this just halfway so we can see what we're looking at. We want the fill color to be some sort of green, as is typical in most games. And then you want your background, if you go to your style section and then background image. We're not going to put an image, but we want to change the tint. And really, I'm just going to kind of lower the alpha so it's kind of invisible, a little translucent, and then I want to give a red tint to it. So then it kind of looks like this. The next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste that vertical box. And we want this just to be in here as well. And we're going to do the same thing here for our magic. And for now, I'm just going to line these up. I'm going to rename this variable to MP text. And actually, I'm going to rename these progress bars as well. So for the health, I'm just going to call it HP bar. And then for magic, I'm going to call this MP bar. And then for this magic bar, I'm going to use instead of, I don't want to use red. I might just use maybe kind of a teal color here. And then instead of green, I'm going to use this blue. And you can customize these really how you want them to look. Make sure you change your text to MP or whatever you want it to say. And the final thing, I'm going to display it here, even though it's not really typical in a video game to have, but I'm going to uh, show the strength on the screen so we no longer have to see the printout. And to do that, I'm just going to do a couple of text blocks in my canvas here. And I'm going to just do something like that. And I'm going to rename this str text. We won't be affecting this, so you don't have to change this variable. I just like to keep things kind of organized that way. I'm going to add one more text down here as well, and then I'm going to grab both of these and I'm going to wrap them with a horizontal box this time. Oh, that time it didn't. Leave it down here. And it changed my order. Oh, I didn't actually wrap it. So let's do wrap with horizontal box. There we go. And then for this one, I want to say this is going to be my strength number. And we can just give this any number. It's going to change almost immediately once the game starts. And then I'm going to pad this one on the left, something like that. The next thing we need to do is actually calculate these numbers. And to do that, we're going to bind them to a function. And to do that, we're going to highlight our HP bar here. And over in your details panel, if you go down to progress and under percentage, percent, we're going to say create binding here. And inside here, we want to get access to our character's information. And we're going to get our player's health. And we're going to divide that by a max health, which will output in through our progress bar. And to do that, we need to go create a max health and max magic variable in here. I want to delete that. We're going to make that in a second. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to delete that. I need strength. Um, in here, create a new variable. I want to call it max health. It's also an integer. And I want to do a max magic as well. And right now our health is set to 100. Max is, or magic is set to 200. So let's do max health at 500 and max magic at 100 so that once we get this set up, we'll be able to see some progress on the bar. Inside here, we need to get access to these variables, and we gave ourselves a way to do this in one of the previous episodes in this series through an interface. So to get access to that interface, we want to say get player character, and we created the function exchange information inside that interface. And is what this does is it sends out the character information here. So here we can come off and say get health, and then you can also come off and say get max health. And we're going to divide these and plug it into our return here. One of the issues that we'll come up with, and I'll show you the problem first. If we come off this and say divide, this is putting out an integer, which means this is truncating it and rounding it to a nearest integer. If it's below 1, it puts out 0. So if we plug this in, since this isn't um, equal to 1, we're going to see this come off as just an empty bar. We need to give ourselves a way to display this though. So to do that, I'm going to go into my third person character, and I'm going to go up to my event begin play. And in here, I'm going to say create widget. And I'm going to assign this as the player display. And then this player display, I want to just say add to viewport. And then we'll be able to see this in our game here. And if you see our HP is 0, according to this, even though we have 100 divided by 500, so it should be about 20%, or should be 20%. And that is because of this. It's converting this to an integer before it's coming in here. So if we actually remove this and come off of your return node and say divide this way, then it converts it here. At this point, it's taking this integer and it's making it a float to where it can be used here. So once you divide the float and float, it outputs a float. So now if we play this, we'll see 20% bar, which is what we're getting. So that's working correctly now. The next thing we want to do is the same thing for magic. So let's go over to our magic, go MP bar. Same thing at the progress and percent. We're going to bind this, say create binding. Once again, we need to get access to that player's information. So I want to say get player character using that same interface. And then from here, I can say get magic and get max magic. And then I'm going to come off of the return node again and say divide, and then plug these in. And then just connect that right there. Now we should also see our magic update, which it does. I can come in here and let's set these to their maxes so we can see them full. So now we see that they're full. For this last thing we're going to do with our heads up display is we're going to update the strength here, which is probably not where you would do this in a game, but it's where I'm just going to display it. So I'm going to go down to the strength number, which is the number that we actually want to update. And over in the details panel under content and text, we're going to create a binding here. And then this one's going to be pretty simple. We're simply going to, same thing we did before. And we're going to say get player character. We're going to do exchange information. And from here, I can just say get strength, and then I can plug this directly into this node. And that'll take care of the conversion. So now if we go play this, we'll see a strength here. And the good thing about the way we did this with binding it straight to our character's attributes that are taken care of in the blueprint is once we click these, you see the strength updates immediately. And if I go here and let's take the health back down and then the magic back down and make sure everything's working correctly. And then when we play this and we use some items, we see our stats update. One thing that, if you notice, my magic filled, but I kept adding magic. One thing I'm not going to worry about doing in this is if you go to your item consumption function that we created previously, once we use an item, this is where we're adding the items attributes to our players attributes. And in here is where you would want to cap um, your player's attributes from going over health. For instance, if you had 100 health max, you don't want it to go over that. So you would really check, and from here you would say check that this is less than max. If it's greater than max, you just want to set health to the max, and then every potion you use or item you use would just keep your health at the max rather than going above it. And you would do the same for other attributes like magic or anything else that has a cap to it. But I'm not going to worry about doing that for this game because I'm not really implementing this into anything. If we play this, we'll look at the issues that we want to correct real quick before we close out the series. One of the issues, if I pick up an item, my inventory displays immediately, which is not really what I want it to do. So there's another issue with this error. Once I picked up an item, it tried to read this inventory widget variable that I created and I'm using throughout my blueprint. And the first time we pick up an item, there's actually nothing assigned to this. So we also need to correct that. And I'll show you where that's happening real quick. Once we pick up an item, we're updating the inventory count, which is that part's fine. But once we update an item, which happens right here, we're trying to remove this inventory widget, which doesn't actually exist yet until we go to this open inventory, where we're actually setting this inventory widget. So it's trying to remove that before it ever happens. And to take care of this, I'm going to come up to my event begin play, and I'm going to go ahead and assign that up here. So I'm going to say create widget. I'm going to set this to that inventory widget. And then I'm going to come off this and say set inventory widget, which is setting that variable that we created to this inventory widget. And that will take care of that issue. So if we run this now and I grab some things, and once I close down, we no longer have the error because it sees it. I'm not displaying it yet on begin play. I'm just setting that variable because we know that this inventory widget is going to be set to this. The next issue is the fact that it opens up whenever we pick up an item, which we don't want it to do. So we'll take care of that real quick. And if we go down to event pickup item, what we're going to do here is pretty simple. We're going to, in between this, I'm going to say right click, or sorry, not right click. I'm going to pull my inventory widget variable out. And I'm just going to check if this is already in the viewport. So I'm going to come off this and say is in viewport and do a branch. And if this is already in the viewport, then we're going to update the UI so that we can see the change in items if we pick something else up while it's open. And if it's not, then we're going to do nothing. So right now, if I come over here and I pick something up, nothing happens, which is what we want. And we could actually just solve this by taking this off altogether. But if you want to be able to open your inventory and still run around and gather things, then this is a way to do that. So right now, if I push I to open my inventory. I'm not seeing an update. If I close my inventory and open it back up, now I see the update. So that's where this comes in. If this is already in the viewport and we pick up an item, then we want to update the UI. And to remind you, the update will remove that inventory widget from our viewport, and then it will open the inventory again, which will show us our fresh inventory. So if I open this and pick up items, we see it updating. So that takes care of that part. The final thing that I'm going to fix is if it's working fine now, but I'm still going to handle this in a different way for opening my inventory. I actually don't want to use a flip-flop here. It works for this exact implementation, but if we ever open our inventory in any other way, then this becomes an issue. For instance, if maybe you tie an inventory menu to a main menu, then if you press I, it'll actually populate another menu over the top of that without removing it, because this doesn't actually know where it's at here. So to handle this, I'm actually going to remove the flip-flop, and I want to do the same thing I just did in the pickup item. I'm going to get my inventory widget, and I'm going to say is in viewport. And then from here, I'm going to say branch. And if this is in my viewport, then I want to remove it from the parent, which will close it. So if this is already in my viewport, pressing I will close it. And if it's not in my viewport, then I want to open the inventory. And we'll look at this real quick. Again, there's no real difference here. If you see, once I open my inventory, I can see my mouse. And if I close it, my mouse doesn't go away. So we'll correct that real quick. And to do that, once we close our inventory, I want to come over here and say get player controller, where we can access the game mode and things like that. So, or the input mode. So I'm going to say set input mode to game only. And then off this same controller, I'm also going to say set show mouse cursor, and I'm going to keep that false. And then if I go play this, I see my health, magic, and strength. If I pick something up, it's already in there. When I pick something up, it updates. And if I close this down, I no longer have my mouse showing, and my mouse now controls my player again. And that's actually going to do it for this series, for this very simple inventory system. Some of the things that we did in this system is we created this widget to display our items in this scroll view. If you have a lot of items, you can scroll through this, and once you click it, you actually you consume the item, and it updates your player stats accordingly. I have it set to where you can still run around with your player and pick things up with it, or you can close it down and take control of your game again, open it back up and use some items. A brief reminder on how to create items. We created this item, which is our parent item. And what we can do is create a child blueprint from this, and I can call this anything, new item. And if we go into this, we can change out everything about it. We can change the shape. We'll just do a simple color real quick. And then we can also, if we select the top level, we can name this whatever we want. I want to call it cylinder. And maybe this one is a really good item, and it does that. And that's as simple as it is to create a new item. And then if we simply drag this out into our world and play it, we can go pick up that item. And when we check, we actually have the cylinder in there now. And using this, because we set its attributes all the way up, it should max out everything, and it does. And again, our strength just continues. So that's how you would create items with this. So that's going to do it for this series on our simple inventory system. I'll likely be doing a more complex system in the future with a more fleshed out user interface and inventory UI and everything like that. So be on the lookout for that in the future. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you learned something from this video, please give it a like and share. As always, happy developing, and I'll see you in the next one.